Hello, hello. Welcome to a new video. This one's going to be a bit different, but it's going to be essentially a series of sorts. Just every 6 months or so, I think I want to make a progress video like this one and sort of talk about how far in I am to this method, what I've learned, what I'm kind of experiencing right now, because I think that one of the reasons I wanted to make this video or this video series is that language learning is kind of this thing where you often forget how you were at the start. Like even just 6 months ago, I'm completely different Japanese level than I was when I started. So this is kind of to archive and catalog how good or bad I am right now, and just maybe in like 2 years I can look back at it and be like, wow, I was at that level at one point, and now I don't feel like it. Now I can't completely remember it, you know? Hopefully that'll be me in like 2-3 years when I'm finally fluent or something close to that level. But yeah, I guess the first thing I should start off with is how I got into this method. I don't really know what to call it. I guess I'll call it AJATT because there's been two more names. They're not like the same thing, but first there was AJATT, which is I guess the original method that was popularized or known about on the internet. And then there was Mia, which was like Matt's thing, and he based it off AJATT, I guess, and that was the brand name or something. But I'm not really too familiar because I was only with Mia for like 4 or 5 months, and then recently, like really recently, this month I believe, Refold came out, and Refold's really nice. It's basically a very nice, snappy website, and it has most of the same stuff, but it has them organized way better, and some stuff is new, like the domain stuff and whatever. So yeah, if you're interested in this method, then just go check out this website. I think this is pretty much, the only thing that you actually need, really. So, yeah, where was I talking about? Oh yeah, so I'm just gonna call this AJATT and not be as confused as I could be. But before I got into AJATT, there was kind of like a prequel into my language learning experience. So this isn't the first language I've tried learning. The first language I actually tried learning was Russian. And this was probably, I'd say, when I was like 13 or 14 years old. Which is, there's like an age that people say, like, if you start learning a language at as a kid, as a young kid, you can become like almost a native. But, unfortunately, like 13 to 14 is kind of too old for that, I guess. I don't know. That's probably still, the jury's probably still out on that one, whether or not that can actually happen. But I think there are, some conclusive things that it is kind of a different experience if you don't learn it from like at least if it's not your first language. Maybe we'll put it that way. But anyway, so I started learning Russian because of environment. I was going to visit my relatives in Russia every summer. I'll be there for like a month, and obviously not knowing the language makes it hard to get around, makes it hard to talk to, my own relatives who didn't speak pretty much any English. And so naturally I decided, like, okay, I'm gonna get myself a basics Russian book and start learning. So I did that, and I think that was really successful in getting me into the language. It taught me all the basics that you kind of have to know if you're going to get started. It's going to give you like the tools to actually go learn on your own, which I think is really an important concept that AJATT focuses on. So, it teaches you the writing system, the Cyrillic alphabet, which is actually really easy alphabet. Like, even if you're not interested in learning Russian or anything like that, I encourage you to go try to learn it, because it probably will only take you like a week or two to actually get it down. It's actually really similar to English alphabet. And hey, now you can vaguely, sort of poorly read other words in Russian that you weren't able to read before. But yeah, so you learn the alphabet and then the basic sounds of the language, get into grammar. Russian grammar is like notoriously like complex. I would say people kind of overhype grammar. I would say the grammar for most languages is very complex. Also, I should turn off WhatsApp. I would say the grammar for most languages is pretty complex, but on the surface value, Russian is definitely like has a lot of declensions, conjugations, and stuff like that that make people freak out. But even when I was starting out, I was like, I'm not gonna memorize all this. I'm not really that kind of person. I'll just like get the gist of it, and then I'll I'll get it as I go. Was kind of my thinking of that, and that turned out to be the correct decision, looking back at it, because you acquire grammar. That's really the important part. If you want to memorize grammar, that's really only going to help you for a grammar exam, which I didn't have any of because I was self-taught. So yeah, I won't go too much more into Russian because this is mostly about AJATT and thus Japanese. I guess the main points to address are like, well, first of all, the main method that I did was immersion, kind of. I learned like all the basics of the book and a couple websites, various concepts, which definitely helped me. And then mostly I tried to read stuff. I wasn't very successful because I kind of had that concept that most people have when they try to get into a language, that like, oh, if I'm reading a book in a new language, I have to understand like every single sentence, every passage. Whereas now with AJAT, now I know that like if a sentence is too hard, it's too hard. Just skip it, move on, and eventually I'll get to that level where I could understand it. And yeah, so I did that. I think the biggest push in my Russian ability that got me to the level where I am now, I guess, although it's probably fallen a bit since I haven't used it in years, is I went home, and when I was not in Russia for most of the year, I decided I was like, all right, let me get like a pen pal, internet friend, or whatever, someone I can like chat with, just text messages or whatever. I think I used Google Hangouts at the time. I don't think most people use Google Hangouts now. They keep saying they're gonna discontinue it, but I don't think they have yet. Anyway, that's a digression. I got that, and I think that really changed the game for me because, not because talking with a native is really that helpful, especially at my level, but what really changed for me was like how much more motivated I was outside of talking to the person and being outside of Russia. I was like constantly like looking stuff up, always thinking about Russian, always trying to learn new things, and I was actually reading more stuff outside of what I would usually do. And so that definitely improved my ability a lot, although I didn't consciously realize that at the time. I did audio immersion because I did watch a ton of Russian TV whenever I was in Russia. Actually, it wasn't actually to learn Russian. It was just, at the time, I was just really bored. I had not much entertainment, and there was no internet, and yeah, I would basically just turn on the TV and just watch and not really care if I was understanding anything or not. And that turned out to be really good because I probably, over the course of several summers, picked up a good amount of ability. But yeah, I think that about covers it for what I was actually doing in terms of method. And then the actual point that I got to was, I would say conversational, rough. Like I could talk. Sometimes I'd be pretty smooth in talking, and I would speak from my mind and not have to really translate from English. I acquired a fair amount, but of course there's like huge gaps in my vocabulary knowledge and stuff that comes because I didn't really input that much, and if you don't input that much, you don't have that much to output, is what I kind of realize now. But as far as accent goes, I would say it was surprisingly good. Like a lot of natives told me that I had like basically a native accent. They were wondering like, how did my accent get so good if I just started when I was like 13, 14. I don't really know. I have a couple like theories about that. Like maybe because I definitely early outputted. Like I was outputting as soon as I went to Russia and started learning. But I don't know if I had like a bad accent at that time when I was like just starting, or if like my accent got like really good maybe like a year in. I wasn't outputting all the time. I was probably outputting only a month while I was there, and then the rest of the time was just inputting, sometimes outputting through the text messages I was sending. but yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a bunch of linguistic reasons that I'm not aware of. Hopefully it goes like that for Japanese, but who knows? I'm very far from actually outputting in Japanese. Let's see. So I think that's about it. I think that's all I want to say about Russian. I don't want to drag it any longer than it has to be, because this is, like I said, a Japanese video. Alright, so last time I probably seriously learned Russian was like 2016, 2017. And then after that, we have to go like all the way to, I guess you could say I started, AJATT technically this summer in 2020, but the actual beginning of Japanese for me, the first time like I actually tried to learn it was summer 2019, late summer, like probably closer to August. And at that time I was kind of I kind of had no real idea what to do. There's like a ton of stuff, there's always a ton of marketing everywhere, like on YouTube. If you just Google search how to learn X language, there's like 100 channels that pop up and thousands of videos and like all this stuff, like learn Japanese while you sleep, like here I'll teach you like 10 basic kanji or something like that. And so it's really easy to get lost. And the thing I kind of settled in, because it's all I knew, is from Russian, I'll just learn the basics first. I'll learn the reading, the writing, the basic sounds, the basic grammar, and go from there. I'll try to read some Japanese stuff, I'll try to watch some Japanese stuff. And I think that would have gone like really well, or probably about as well as Russian did for me, except for the fact that Japanese is really, really different from English. And in one way it's really different from English is kanji. And basically the method that the site I was using to learn Japanese, their method for kanji was like, just learn it one by one as you go, and just, constantly like on the side, just write it over and over and over and over again until you memorize it. And I tried that, and I could already tell, like after a week or two, I was trying really hard to every day, like I would set aside some time to try to rewrite the kanji I was supposed to know already, and I would forget it, because if you just start learning kanji one by one randomly, they're just a bunch of random strokes and you don't understand them. They're not actual shapes that you can recognize and remember easily. And so I was kind of demotivated for that. Although I didn't stop and quit for a while, I kind of just wasn't that into it. But eventually, not really eventually, kind of like really quickly, like I probably started learning Japanese, and then 2-3 weeks after, I heard from a friend about this thing called RTK, Remembering the Kanji, book by Heisig. And I was kind of curious, like, alright, I'm having a lot of trouble with kanji, maybe this book can help me. So I read the preview for it on Amazon. I was like, and after reading the introduction, the preface, and how the method works and what the method is, I was like, I remember I was completely sold on the method, and I was like, yeah, dude, this makes so much sense, this is gonna work. And so without hesitation, I bought the book, and when it arrived, I did it straight for 3 months, and I finished the book, which was kind of amazing because it's a lot of kanji. It's 2200 kanji, and the one drawback that a lot of people have about full AJATT production, or not full AJATT, full RTK, production RTK as it's called, is that it takes a long time and a lot of people can just burn out. So thankfully that didn't really happen to me. Thankfully I was able to do it all the way through, but if I were to start now, I would definitely just do a recognition RTK instead. But hey, I did the production first, so that's that. And I remember I finished it just barely before I was actually going to go to that trip for Japan. I finished it the day before. And so when I was in Japan, I didn't really know any Japanese, because instead of actually learning Japanese, I just learned kanji. I learned 2200 kanji, and that was kind of fun because you see writing everywhere in Japan. And so I was just pulling out the kanji draw app on my phone and just looking up all these other things and learning oh, so that's how you pronounce that kanji, or that word written in kanji. It's I saw the sign and I saw the kanji and I knew what the kanji means, so I could probably guess what the word was. Oh, that's probably pedestrian or something, because walk person or walk like, I don't know what the keyword, I don't even remember what the keyword was for mono, like whatever. People who know Japanese will probably know what I'm talking about. But anyway, that was really fun, and unfortunately after I got back from Japan, I had to get back into school, and I get like really busy in school. It was my last semester too, so I was trying to like wrap everything up with like my research work and my classes and everything like that. And so I didn't really get into Japanese until the summer. And even when the summer hit, I had kind of like a lot of free time before my job started in August. And I was just kind of playing like games for a lot of the time. I think for a straight month I pretty much just played nothing but Dark Souls PvP, and that was the reason why there's a bunch of Dark Souls 1 PvP videos on my channel. So that was fun, but Dark Souls kind of like isn't a game you should play that much. I'll say that. But yeah, eventually I got kind of bored of that, and I was just kind of on YouTube one day, and I didn't even know what AJATT or anything like it was at the time. I was just kind of clicking on random videos and listening to it while I was playing Dark Souls. I think I was like just playing a PvE run or something. So I wanted something to listen to in the background, and I found Matt's like 4-hour, 3-hour AJATT like experience ramble. I was like, AJATT, what is that? That sounds interesting. I know this guy does Japanese videos, but what is AJATT? So I clicked the video, and the funny thing is like he doesn't explain what AJATT is in the video until like 2 hours in. But even so, the video was really interesting to watch, like, or listen to, I guess. He talks about like all his experiences of learning Japanese and what he did, and as he explained the method and like what he was doing and how successful he got, and like how, you know, by the time that he hit college, when he started in high school or something, he was already talking Japanese natives. He was already kind of fluent, and I was like, wow, this is kind of actually what I need, because I think the biggest thing that I lacked with this approach was like I didn't really have an end goal in mind. It's like I think most people, when they try to learn a language, they don't really have like this end goal in mind, or this rather a way to the end goal, I should say. They kind of just like, all right, well, I'll buy a basic grammar book, you know, like I'll buy Genki edition 1 and 2. I'll learn the basics. Maybe I'll try to read some manga, you know, anime if I'm interested in that and I think I can handle it, you know, not just with English subs, with Japanese subs or no subs. So, you know, some people might try that and they might get to some point, especially if they immerse. If they don't immerse, they'll probably won't get off the beginner's plane. But most people don't have like an idea like, okay, well, what am I going to do to actually become fluent, you know, actually reach a very high level of a Japanese ability? And I think that's what I was missing, because like I would have definitely put in a lot of effort and time if I knew the path to get there. I think, so I played old school RuneScape for like 2.5 years, and I did like crazy monotonous skills for like a year and a half at one point, just to get the maximum number of experience points in that skill. And from that experience, I kind of learned that if I so desire, and I know the pathway, and like I know the method, what to do, I can just do that method over and over and over again until I reach the goal. Like, you know, if I want to get 200 mil fishing in the game, I just gotta go do fishing, like do the method, do the efficient method, of course, because I want to save time, and just do it every day, and just eventually I'll get there. And that's what happens. So I was like, you know, I could pretty much apply that to language learning, but I didn't know the efficient method, and it was really hard to find it because there's so much noise in the language learning space that you don't know what's good and what's not. But hearing like Matt's experiences was like, well, this guy actually got fluent. Like he got actually really good in a short amount of time, like, you know, 2-3 years or whatever. And I was like, well, if he can do it, then so can I. Like, surely I'm not that different in terms of like, you know, assumed language ability. Of course, like everyone has like a lot of differences, but I was thinking like, well, certainly I can do it, you know, if I put in the time and effort and I know the method, then I can do it. That was my thinking, and I don't think that's super wrong either. Even right now, I don't think so. But yeah, once I heard the method, I kind of like had a paradigm shift in my life. I was like, you know, one day I was like just lazing around playing video games, not really knowing what was gonna do in the future. I had some vague ideas, but not really anything concrete. And now I was all of a sudden like on the Mia website. I was reading everything. I remember I read everything on the Mia website. I set up all the Anki. I set up all the things you're supposed to, like the subs to SRS. And I was like, all right, I have the perfect like gateway, because I remember on the site it's like, okay, well you should do Kana and RTK. It's like, all right, I already learned Kana and I already did RTK, so all that's left is to immerse and also do this thing called sentence mining. And I kind of started out using like the basic 2000 deck, which is like a pre-made deck of sentences. I was doing that instead of sentence mining for a while, but I kind of outgrew it pretty quickly, because the purpose of that deck is to get you a base so that you know some words to make sentence mining easier, to make like finding actual one target sentences easier. But I kind of already knew enough words, because there's this one thing that I omitted that is kind of pretty important, is that I watched so many years of like subbed anime, so I was actually like hearing the language for, when did I start like watching anime? Probably like in middle school or something. So probably like 10 years, honestly, close to that. And if you do that for that amount of time, even if it's English subs, you do pick up something, I would imagine. Or maybe if you're paying really close attention like I was. I remember like I kind of half learned Kana, like almost Kana. I kind of figured out like the structure of Japanese. Like I would see like a name written in Romaji, and I was like, I would always see it's like, oh, this is almost always like consonant, consonant vowel, consonant vowel, consonant vowel, and it seems to like come in pairs like that. And then there's like the n sound, and then I was kind of like figuring out like the phonetics of how it worked, and then I was seeing how that matched up with Kana sometimes, because you could sometimes see it in the anime, like they would point at something, they would say the translation or the transliteration, and they would show the Kana. I was like, oh, so that means that. And I never like committed to it until like the summer of 2019. I was like, all right, I'm actually going to properly learn all the Kana. But I did learn a lot of stuff like just passively like that. I learned a lot of basic words. I learned a lot of basic concepts, ideas that are kind of unique to Japanese. So I wasn't on like level 0. I think that's very important, because if you're actually on level 0, something like that would be very helpful, the basic 2000 deck. But anyway, the whole point of that was that I didn't use the basic 2000 deck very long. I pretty much just started immersing in sentence mining. And the first thing I started with immersion was just audio visual. I would just watch anime that I'd already seen. Like I'm someone who likes to rewatch shows many times. Not like all at once, but like over the years I'll have cumulatively watched like some show like 5 times or something. Like I have shows where I've seen them actually like 5 or 6 times, just because like I originally watched it like 10 years ago, and every year or two I'll just rewatch it. So that's a perfect start for me, because like I have no worries about not understanding what's going on with the plot. I already know the plot by heart pretty much, so all that's left is just the language that they're actually speaking. So what I did was I just did that for like 3 months. I did nothing but watch anime all day, because I was on a summer break. I didn't have a job. I was complete free time, and I definitely learned a lot. I sentence mined a lot with subs to SRS, and I think I made like honestly really insanely fast progress from that, because if you're immersing and doing the method like 10-12 hours a day, which I wasn't doing like 16 hours a day, I wasn't that hardcore, but I think at least 10 hours a day was what I was doing. If you do 10 hours a day, then you're going to make a lot of progress really fast. And that's something I kind of miss now that I'm doing full-time work now. I can't really do 10 hours a day of immersion anymore. It's just I don't have time for that. I wish I could, but for right now I have to make do with what time I have. And I'll get more into time and time usage later into the video. For now, I'll leave it at that. So yeah, that's how I got started. I pretty much found out AJATT. I'd already done like the basics mostly, so I could skip through that, and I just went straight to immersion. And I watched anime for like 3 months, 2 months, something like that. And then after that time, I kind of like I'm kind of interested in manga. So I was thinking like I want to start reading manga in Japanese because at the time I was still kind of reading manga in English. I've been reading manga for like a long time, and of course all of it's been in English. So I have like a lot of favorite series and a lot of stuff I know pretty well. So I could do the same thing that I was doing with anime, but I could just do it in manga. And I started, and it was really rough at first because like how Japanese works is like you know the kanji, so you know the meaning of the words sometimes, but you don't know how to pronounce it. And if you want to look it up, since it's like a picture and it's not like highlightable, you have to either use OCR, which I didn't do because I found OCR like the couple times that I used it wasn't very like effective. And instead, I would just pull up a kanji draw app on the side and just look it up and then G-show it. And so I did that for a long time. I had to look up a ton of stuff, and it was, looking back, it was like pretty laborious, but eventually like you learn enough to the point where you don't need to like write out the kanji by hand anymore. You can just type a word. You can either guess at how the word's pronounced and then type it and be correct most of the time, or you can just type words that have the kanji that you're looking for and then kind of glue them together yourself. But yeah, that's how I got into reading. And I think something I didn't realize at the time was that's like a pretty early start to reading. From what I was reading in the method, most people are expected to start reading like later, like after the first 6 months. They're actually supposed to start reading more. So I think that definitely helped my progression. I think I progressed a lot faster because of that, because I was reading early and I was reading a lot. And when you read stuff, you actually tend to pick up more quickly, I guess. You learn new language more quickly. When you're watching stuff, it's easy to miss stuff and have it not be very comprehensible, but when you're reading stuff, it's like I can sit here and take as long as I like and look up as much as I want. And I definitely looked up stuff too often, fairly often, but eventually I kind of got a grip on that. I decided to, if I'm not feeling it, I'll just straight up not look up anything. And if I'm feeling it, and then if I get into that mode and then I see something that's really interesting that hey, like, I should know this, I almost know this, let me look it up, then I actually acquire that most of the time. And that was something like when I was doing Russian, if I had that piece of knowledge, like, hey, you can just ignore stuff that you don't know, I definitely would have gotten a lot farther, I feel like. So it's a very important piece of knowledge that you should really take seriously when you're getting started. Nowadays, it's not so important because it's not like I don't look up stuff that often anymore. It's like it's way less frequent to the point where sometimes if I'm reading a manga and it's not really that hard, then I can go like 5 or 10 pages without needing to look something up. And now I don't really think about it too much. But if I'm reading something harder, especially like a novel or visual novel, then it's still something that I keep in mind. So yeah, visual novels, that's what I was going to talk about next. So after manga, I think I read like a month or two where so basically like the first 3 months I was just doing anime. Then I added manga, and then for 2 months I did anime manga, and then I also added, after that point, maybe it was earlier than 2 months, maybe it was like only a month. But eventually I added visual novels, and I think visual novels are a really important step into getting me ready for reading like actual novels, which I recently started doing. And I say this because like visual novels are kind of this perfect in-between step that I've never seen talked about, where it's like, yeah, there's pictures and there's a lot of the time there's voice lines and stuff, but there's also like half the time it's the main character or the narrator like putting down text in the box, and that stuff isn't voiced almost always. So you have like half voiced, half non-voiced, so you have to kind of like rely on your own reading really half the time, but you still have a lot of comprehensibility. You still have like the plot usually isn't that complex, especially if it's like a lighthearted visual novel or whatever, and you have all these characters that you get to know. There's like a small set of characters that you get to know, and there's like a plot that you're very familiar with, and there's visual cues too. Like there's going to be like CGs, there's going to be people having different facial expressions. Like, so if someone says something like embarrassing or funny or weird, then there's going to be appropriate facial appropriate reactions in the visual component of things, and that can all really add up to make things easier. But still, it's pretty different from manga because it has to have a lot of exposition. It can't show everything. So it has to describe, like, using somewhat literary language, like the facial expression, how it felt, like the wind, chilling your bones or something like that. It kind of like ramps you up, but not all the way. And I think doing that for a couple months before I actually started reading light novels, which is what I'm doing now, I think that really helped, because now when I remember when I first started trying to read light novels, it wasn't actually that hard. I felt like, there's some fancy words in there, but I can pretty much guess what they mean from context, and I'll just learn them a little bit here and there. And now most of the time it's like, unless, the topic changes to something I'm not familiar about, I can really get by pretty easily, and I don't need to look up stuff that often. And yeah, so that was really a big game changer for me, I feel like. But maybe it only works for me because I'm actually interested in in visual novels, and have like some interest, because it still has the same problem with manga where you can't copy paste stuff. But I was kind of used to that from manga, and I had a lot of knowledge from manga about like how to actually look up stuff without needing to draw the kanji. I kind of learned enough words at that point. So yeah, I feel like that's been my basic progression, and I feel like it's been going pretty well. So yeah, that pretty much covers the section I have in my little bullet point list of what I've actually been doing in terms of the method. Hopefully I haven't been messing up too much. Oh yeah, obviously, this is kind of obvious, so I forgot to say it, but obviously I've been doing Anki. I've been doing Anki ever since I started. I only missed 2 days of reps because I was out on a trip, and I was kind of just too tired and too lazy to do it, but I made those up pretty quickly. And aside from that, I've done them every single day, and also added at least 10 cards every single day. So if you look at the card count here, I now have, might be hard to see with the resolution, but this is over 2,000 cards. And honestly, it's kind of weird looking at this, because you look at this and like, well, I must know at least 2,000 words, in fact even more, because I know that there's a lot of words that I don't make cards for, like even new words that I've never seen before. There's a lot of words that I see that are kind of new to me, like I've never seen them before, but they're really, really easy. They're just two words I know smashed together, and if you see it once or twice, you'll pretty much get it. So I don't make cards for those. I try to like make cards for the stuff I find really hard, like it's a single kanji with kunyomi reading that is not easily guessable. It's like pretty unique on its own, so that I make a card for. Or a kanji compound where the kanji in it are not kanji that I usually know the readings for. So yeah, that's mainly what I use Anki for. And as for like the effect of Anki, I feel like it kind of helps, but I feel like it's really minimal. It's why, not minimal, but it's like really supplementary, and that's why I don't do too much with Anki. I have it all set up, and I make cards every day, and I do my reps every day. But besides that, I don't do much else. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's probably helped me a lot more than I realize, but I think overall it's not something I'm gonna ever do like 30 new cards a day and do like 2 hours of reps. I don't think I'm ever gonna do that, because I prefer to do my reps in like the time he has here, which is like 15 minutes, pretty much 15-20 minutes for a session of reps, and then the rest of the time I can just focus on immersion. I think that's the main strategy that I want to go on. Also, this thing I have right here, I recently installed Morphman, which is something I kind of never really did. It probably would have been really useful like earlier, but I feel like now it could be still pretty useful. If I watch a show, I could make a ton of pre-made cards easily. But there's also this thing here where I have this huge sentence list, and this is just stuff I take down when I'm reading manga, or not usually a novel because I read those on the Kindle. But if I'm like reading a manga, or maybe even see like a YouTube comment with a sentence, then I usually copy paste it here, and I make a bunch of cards really easily from that. But yeah, that might be useful. But the most interesting thing I found about Morphman is that it tells you kind of roughly how many things you know. So this is the number of total known morphs. The right one is not that important, but the left one's kind of like how many words do you know roughly. And so this was interesting to me. I didn't think I would know this many at this point, but it is kind of accurate. In fact, I know it's actually like a low estimate because I imported a couple of decks from some TV shows, and I did the Morphman thing, and it showed a lot of cards as being I+1 where it had really easy words. There was just words that I knew without even ever making cards for, and so of course like it's not gonna know that I know these words. Like, let me see if I can find one. I think I've taken most of this, but like this one, Dusu, like I know what this means, and I've known it for a long time, but I've just never made a card for it. You know, I don't make a card for everything. So at some point I'll either have to like update this database, like go through these and manually mark cards that I know. I've already done it for a lot of these, but I just kind of got, you know, kind of bored. Like this one says I don't know the word for key. Like I know the word for key. That's a really easy word. Not easy word, I guess I shouldn't say that. It's like a really common word. This is for drowning. This one I think is a misparse. Yeah, it didn't understand the space here. And this is a person's name. This happens a lot. But anyway, Morphman is kind of interesting. At least I get this rough vague number that I can kind of judge my progress, because up to this point I've really had nothing to judge my progress with, other than like how easily I could understand something, which is even to me very subjective, and it can change a lot depending on the context. Like sometimes like I'll understand the whole conversation perfectly, and then the next conversation I just won't understand anything because it's a completely different topic that I guess I didn't really know that much about. It's interesting how that happens, but hopefully as I just keep going, the percentage of stuff that I'll understand just keeps going up until the point where I can safely say that like, oh yeah, I'm pretty fluent in Japanese. That might be a couple of years from now, but hopefully that happens. Yeah, and I know this video is getting pretty long. I knew it was going to be a long video because of how much stuff I had to write down to make sure to talk about, but yeah, okay. Anyways, yeah, I was just wrapping up this section about the actual routine method that I've actually been doing. I think this actually covers it, you know, now that I include Anki. So moving on, I want to talk about my actual thoughts on where I am now, where I am going to be in the future. That's actually the next section, so I'll talk about that afterwards. But my current thoughts is basically I feel like I've improved very fast. Like, it's not easy for me to feel like that, but if I look objectively, 6 months ago, I knew almost no Japanese, or at least like very super basic infantile level Japanese that couldn't do anything or really understand anything. And now I'm like reading actual whole visual novels, and I can get by the plot, and I can understand most of what's going on. And even like light novels that I can read and stuff like that. Like if I were to try to read a light novel 6 months ago, I'd absolutely be impossible. So, you know, I've definitely made a lot of progress there. But at the same time, I feel like it's not all there yet, right? There's kind of this barrier between, or this difference, this separation between conscious and unconscious, the acquired and the learned. So I think I've definitely learned a lot of stuff. I probably have learned most of the Japanese that I've acquired. But the difference, like, how much Japanese have I learned but not yet acquired? I'm not really sure the scale of that, but I feel like it's more than a little bit. I feel like I definitely have kind of used like when you're learning in the beginning especially, like you use your dictionary a lot because it's a crutch to help you understand what's going on. Because if you didn't do that and you really only just try to read and watch stuff, you probably have a very low comprehension going on, and that could help. That could, you know, you could eventually get there, but it wouldn't be as fun, right? Especially if like you understood like 2% of what you were reading. You know, it would feel like you're reading gibberish. But, you know, when you start adding in all this stuff like context and like context clues like pictures and stuff like that, and voice acting and dictionaries, then you start to get a bit more. You start to get a lot more It starts to get a lot more comprehensible and a lot more fun. But using the dictionary to rely on that, it's kind of just. There's going to be a gap, right? There's going to be like, oh, I know this word in Anki, and I feel like I know it, like I can answer it on a flashcard, but when it comes to it, it's like, it doesn't really come that easily to me. So like, there's a lot of Japanese like that, where it's like, if I see it in a sentence, I can read it eventually. I might have to pause and take a second. It wouldn't be like actually fluent. Like some words I can absolutely read fluent. Like if I just read like the word for to buy, or to talk, to see, like really basic words like that, then obviously I read them pretty much instantly, or hear them pretty much instantly and understand them instantly if it's a audio-visual context. But if I'm like going into like harder Japanese, like from like Japanese about science, or even more like niche stuff, like I forgot what the terminology is, like the term is called, but like the science of like rocks. I recently encountered this because I opened up Minecraft in Japanese like yesterday, and I was like just gonna like walk around and see like, oh, what words can I learn from these highlights. It highlights all the items and stuff like that. When you hover over the items, they show the name of the item, of course. And so like, okay, now I have to know the word for like diorite and andesite, and like it might be good to know those, if you want to go for a really high level, but it's like the usefulness of that is not very high. It's like I'm digressing here, but like even me, like I probably didn't know the word andesite when I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I'm probably saying it right, I guess. Andesite. The first time I've seen that word, and I think the only time really, is in Minecraft, because it's an item in Minecraft, and like it's a rock because you see it's a rock, and like you mine it and stuff like that, so you kind of figure out what andesite is. I guess that's kind of interesting in a way, right? That's like how people learn words most of the time. Like most people in their native language, they don't learn words from a dictionary unless they're like literary words or very technical words. Most of the time they'll just see it in immersion, or their daily life, or whatever they're doing, and they'll figure it out. They'll figure out what it means. But yeah, that's an interesting digression. Anyway, I think I'll get back to that. But anyway, yeah, if I venture into domains I'm not familiar with, which is like this new concept that Refold brings about. I think it has it here. Yeah, here. This is actually, like TV shows, books, movies, etc. Those can be domains, but like even smaller domains like theoretical physics, right? That can be another domain. So even if I know theoretical physics in English, if I don't know the words for it in Japanese, then I'm gonna struggle. There's another concept here. Comprehension index, comprehension levels. Oh yeah, this section was very interesting to me. Yeah, this one. So I mentioned earlier that I can kind of read visual novels and light novels and watch anime and stuff, and kind of understand the story and follow along and stuff like that. Obviously I can't understand everything perfectly. There's stuff that I miss all the time, but I feel like most of the time I'm at level 4. So I can follow along with the majority of the ideas that are being expressed, but I lose the details. And I use context a lot to figure out stuff, like especially for words that I haven't really acquired. I use context. That's something that happens a lot when I read novels. And comfortable, I feel like this only happens for easy stuff. Like if I'm watching like a sort of kiddie anime where they're not really using much hard language or talking about anything complex, they're just talking about like everyday life, which I've seen a lot, I know all the words for pretty much. Then I usually venture to comfortable. And I don't think I have almost anything in automatic yet. Maybe I do, like just a bit, and I'm not realizing it, but I feel like at 6 months in, that's not really something I can expect to have. Anyway, I'm digressing a lot, and I'm kind of losing my train of thought pretty fast. But yeah, anyway, that's my whole point. Like, there's a fast improvement, but at the same time, it's not like black and white. It's not like now this Japanese I understand perfectly and this other Japanese I don't. It's kind of like there's like a percentage of understanding I can assign to every little thing in Japanese. It's like, yeah, I kind of understand that, or I kind of acquired that, but not super acquired it. Like I have this other word. So yeah, that's how I feel, and I feel like that's just a fact of language learning and learning in general, I guess. And that's not really a worry of mine, but it's definitely an observation I made. It's like, it's a something I'm always thinking about, because I'm constantly thinking about this method and how much am I actually understanding, how much am I actually progressing. I'm always a little bit worried about like, oh, maybe I'm not actually progressing that well and I'm wasting a lot of time, and you know, if I just change this method a bit, maybe I could actually go a bit better. I try not to let myself devolve into that kind of thought too much, because at the end of the day, it might be just really small optimizations if I just keep doing what I'm doing. I think I'm already on a solid enough path to actually get to where I want to go. Moving on, I think another thing that is the biggest mystery and the biggest hard point for me in Japanese, and probably will be for the whole thing, is not kanji, it's not grammar, it's not vocab or anything like that. It's pitch accent. I think this is the biggest difference between one of the biggest differences. I guess you could say there's a lot of differences between Japanese and Russian from an English speaker's point of view. But the biggest thing is like the actual pronunciation system is completely different. Like in English and Russian, we use a stress-based system, and I don't completely know everything about like stress-based systems on a paper level, like on a conscious level, but I've definitely like mastered stress. I can speak English fine. I could speak Russian, like at least pronunciation wise, really, really well. So I must have acquired like the ability to use stress. So I've mastered in that aspect. But for pitch accent, it's a completely foreign beast to me. Like I don't even understand how it works completely yet. I have like a lot of ideas that I've drawn just from constantly looking up like pitch accent definitions and trying to hear it as much as I can, but it's I know there's also like a barrier between like, you can learn all about pitch accent consciously and you can learn about how all the rules work, but that's not enough. Like you have to actually acquire it if you want to use it, because when you're speaking you don't have that much time to actually think about all the pitch accent rules and the pitch accent of every word. You kind of have to acquire it to some degree at least. If you say a word and you're constantly thinking about the pitch accent, it's going to hinder you. I remember Matt talked about that and how he's like, he can speak really well, but it's kind of like a lot of effort because he has to pay attention to his pitch accent. And so I'm wondering if that means that he either hasn't acquired pitch accent or he has acquired it but doesn't know how to, but he hasn't like been able to draw it out, kind of. There was an interesting talk that was posted recently. It was like an interview that he did with Stephen Krashen, which is I won't say too much, like, it's just the guy who he's the guy who he came up with, formalized, theorized, I guess. I don't know too much the details, but he basically proposed the input hypothesis, which is what AJATT's all about at its core. And Matt was talking to Stephen Krashen about the pitch accent things, like, well, you know, Matt's kind of hypothesis was maybe at a certain point, like when you're a baby, like you're open to all sounds, like you can pick up all the sounds of your native language or any language that you're exposed to. But after a certain point, the brain just sort of specializes into the language and sound system that your first language is in. And so it was an interesting thought, but I feel like, you know, it's just a hypothesis. I feel like there could be more to it. And so Krashen had this idea where it was also a hypothesis of his. It wasn't something he's actually like hard researched. It was like more of group membership. It's like if you're feel like an actual member of the group, like subconsciously, you'll be able to speak like members of that group. And that was a super interesting like concept, because you know, at the same time, like on one hand I've never heard of it, but at the same time I kind of like I feel like I thought about that before in a certain way. I just hear this like really low timbre sound. It's kind of creepy. Oh, okay. I think it's like a car outside that's super giving out like super low bass sounds and was kind of like vibrating the floor. Okay, that was really weird. Sorry for the interruption. But yeah, anyway, back to that. I think the group membership hypothesis is very interesting. But yeah, I'm just talking about it here because I think it's interesting. I don't have any solid conclusions on it myself. Obviously, I'm still like way beyond like, or way. I'm like too far from the point from output where I can actually think about this more concretely, or at least in respect to my own ability. But I do think it's something I want to give more thought to, especially in the future when I get closer. I'll definitely do the formal pitch accent learning and theories and stuff like that. I do think that's important to know, at least on a kind of just to know what's going on level. Okay, this is really turning into a ramble, but I think I'll leave pitch accent aside. I'm not going to talk too much about it other than just mention the fact real quickly that I have been learning the pitch accents. I've been trying to hear them as much as possible, but I've had kind of like limited results. I just kind of memorized the accents. I don't think I've really acquired them. We'll see. Hopefully in a year or so I'll be more clear on this. The next point that I want to talk about is like there's this interesting phenomenon. Maybe it's not that interesting. Maybe it's only interesting to me. There's like a delay that I notice that's different between spoken language, understanding spoken language, and understanding like written language. And it's not like super mysterious. Obviously, it's because I have this gap between my listening ability and my reading ability. But I feel like if you take some piece of Japanese that I've acquired, like say some really basic sentence like "Did you see that?" or the equivalent in Japanese, just imagine. If I heard that in spoken language, like if I was watching an anime without subtitles, I would probably understand it instantly. Like I wouldn't have to think twice about it, My brain would just be completely, just process it, understand it, and my conscious brain wouldn't really have to do much work. But I'm reading, like if I see the same sentence written, there's almost like a kind of little delay. Like my brain, it's not the same as when I'm looking at an English sentence. It's when I see it, my brain has to kind of like kick itself into Japanese mode. It's like, all right, I need you to decode this Japanese. Like it's some kind of cipher that I need to work out, like a math problem. And as my reading ability has gotten higher and higher, this has kind of gotten easier and easier. I don't like go word by word or kana by kana anymore. But it still feels like if I'm just starting to read and I haven't done any Japanese reading for a bit, and for a bit meaning like if it's like the first time I'm reading that day or something, then there's like a delay. And if I'm reading a lot of stuff like continuously, then it's like I get into a flow and I read a ton of stuff like very smoothly and naturally, and I don't have that delay. But it's kind of interesting that there is that delay at all. And I definitely notice it a lot more, not in reading because I have that flow kind of thing going on, but if I see like a sign in a show, for example, like I'll give this one example. There's a movie, Akira, which is a very famous movie, anime movie. Most people probably have heard of it at least. There's like a scene in the beginning where they're driving on a motorcycle and they pass by this sign, and it's only shown on screen for like 2 seconds or something, maybe like 3 seconds, just enough time for like a native to actually like read it and understand it. But for me, like I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't even able to get the gist of it. I had to actually like pause it, and I actually had to actually read the sign. I had to stop, and even though it wasn't a super hard like bit of text on the sign, it was kind of just like, entry forbidden, this is dangerous or whatever. I don't remember what it said exactly. But even that stuff, like, I've acquired that Japanese, like it's not new Japanese to me, I feel like. But I feel like I haven't acquired the ability to read it. Because one observation I've noticed is that I can read stuff in Russian really, really fast. Or at least like, I guess in terms of like a car, like when you go from like 0 to 60, like how long does it take? For my brain, like when I read English or English or Russian, that 0 to 60 is very fast. If I go from zero, like not reading at all, to full reading and just getting the glimpse of the word and catching it and understanding it, then I'd say my ability for that is very good. But for Japanese, it's very low. It's very I kind of have to look at it for longer, almost twice as long or 3 times as long sometimes, if it's just a random sign somewhere. I don't know. I'm sure like this will clear up as my reading ability gets better and better, but it's definitely a little bit discomforting at first, like until I got, I kind of just reasoned myself, all right, well, that's just my reading ability. But at first it was kind of like, oh damn, I learned this Japanese, I acquired this Japanese, I feel like it, but when it comes to reading it, it still looks like a blob of gibberish until I actually start focusing on it, like if I kick my brain into action. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about that other than it's just another observation that I've made. I've made like a lot of observations that I won't even state in this video because they're kind of not really that interesting. The 2 that I've mentioned so far, the pitch accent and the spoken language versus written language delay, I think those are the most interesting ones I've made in terms of like my own personal judgment, obviously. But yeah, anyway, I think I'll leave that topic there. It's not something I can really dive that much more into. So yeah, that pretty much completes my thoughts on where I'm at right now. I mentioned with this, I feel like I'm most of the time at level 4. Sometimes I can get to level 5 for like really easy stuff, and then if I'm hitting something where I'm really out of the domain, I can fall down to level 3 or sometimes even level 2 at worst. It's never level 1 or 0. Like this is something that just never happens to me. And obviously level 0 is like complete beginner, so yeah, I feel like that's pretty good, to get to level 4 where you're seeing most things in level 4. That's kind of, in my opinion, that's the getting off the beginner's plane, because the beginner's plane is hard because you understand so little that it's not really that fun immersing, because you don't understand most of the content that you're immersing. When you get to level 3 and level 4, you can kind of start picking and choosing your content a lot more easily because you have so many more options and you can get really picky with what you want to immerse in. So I'm definitely enjoying Japanese a lot because of that. I just see it as regular entertainment now with, a bit of G-showing and flashcard making. So yeah, those are my thoughts on where I'm at right now. The last section I'll go into here is the near future. I won't talk about like the far future, because far future is like, couple of years down the line, I just want to be fluent. That's my far future. Don't have anything more concrete than that. Near future, I'm gonna keep doing mostly what I described here: anime, manga, visual novels, light novels, and probably also start digging into harder texts once I feel like I'm getting better. Like I'll try reading like more literary type of novels, not just light novels. But that should come, I don't know how fast it'll come actually, because I've only just started reading, but even now I feel like my reading is at a good enough level where I can keep at it for a couple months, and then I'll get good enough to sort of level up again, like go into harder stuff. Who knows if this rate of progress will continue as fast as who knows if, sorry, I'm getting a little bit tongue-tied here. Who knows if I'll progress as fast as I have up to this point in the next 6 months. So when I make the next video, I'm not sure if I'll have made the same kind of progress, but hopefully, if I keep at it. Also, the next major change that I want to implement into my Japanese is the monolingual transition. I think this is less emphasized in the new site, Refold, but in Mia, I remember it was pretty emphasized that when you're moving from stage 1, which is roughly like the first 6 months at my pace, and you're moving into stage 2, which is the next 6 months, the main thing about stage 2 is that you want to make the monolingual transition. Casual and structured here is what they have it here. this is something I definitely want to do because I feel like it's a major turning point. To learn Japanese completely within Japanese sounds really awesome. I know it's not like perfectly like that. You still do use the bilingual dictionary sometimes, but it would be pretty cool to actually be able to read the dictionary in Japanese itself. So I'm definitely gonna go through this sometime next year, and probably gonna prioritize this a bit, just so I get this done, and hopefully I'll be making the transition pretty smoothly. I've just been reading about it and haven't really actually tried starting it myself. And so that last point I already mentioned, I'm gonna do more reading because I think reading is really important to level up your language ability really fast. Yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to touch on, and the video is just about an hour now. Pretty long video, and I got really rambly towards the end, but hopefully some people enjoyed that. Yeah, that's been my 6 months of Mia. I'd say that definitely, I think I'll talk a little bit now about like external feelings, not just about my progress, but also about like my usage of time and stuff like that. I've definitely noticed that ever since I graduated college, which was this year, and started my job, I've noticed how much my time is kind of crunched down. Like 40 hours a week really takes out a lot of your time. Like, yeah, you have your evenings and your weekends, but a lot of those extra hours are actually spent doing stuff that you couldn't do because you were doing your 40-hour-a-week job or whatever. So like if I needed to do some chores or what else, like I don't know, just various other tasks, or cleaning or anything else that I need to do, especially stuff like on other projects. If like I need to do something with programming, that is just something I also sometimes do on the side, mostly just for work now, but I still do some of it kind of as a hobby, trying to integrate it with Mia, making some tools for myself. But even stuff like that, like when you have work and hobbies and like learning Japanese, you kind of feel like you have to schedule your time way more precisely than you did when you had more time. This is something I've really felt like. Because in the summer, obviously, the only thing I was doing was Japanese as my one and only focus, and it was awesome, but now I'm kind of back to real life, or the real world, I guess, where I'm kind of doing something else most of the time besides Japanese. And I'm trying to immerse like, at least 3 or 4 hours every day. I don't know if I'm hitting that all the time, but I definitely try. I do my Anki every day. And also, I don't know, I guess that's just about it. That's all you can do, is you can just put hours in, keep at the method. I feel like my time in RuneScape really set this up in a way. I'm not sure I'd have the same approach about putting hours in and managing my time and doing stuff like that, and just constantly working towards a single goal for a long time, many years, if I didn't play RuneScape in the way that I did. But who knows? I definitely don't think it was a negative in that aspect. I'm trying to think of anything else to say, but I think that's really it for about now. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's been really long, but I've been told that some people wanted longer rambles from me. And yeah, hopefully in the next 6 months I'll be way better.